I have always hated polyester primer. Tons of failures for me in the past. I've never wanted to go back to it. But because of the timeline that we have for this truck to make the SEMA show, and then collectively seeing all of the other builders and shops painting with polyester, I thought I would revisit some of those struggles, and today we want to show you guys everything that we learned when we shot this primer. Polyester. I don't even know where to begin with polyester because of all of the several struggles that I have had while trying to spray polyester. When I was a kid spraying my dad's Jeep in a backyard in the dirt, I never learned any of what we teach from a shop environment. I learned it through the School of Hard Knocks. It was trial and error on a lot of products, and it wasn't until later that we started seeking out more and more education on these products. But down to spraying polyester primer, I can remember taking a screwdriver and carving it out of the gun all in dried chunks where it just completely turned solid inside the gun. I can remember delaminating panels, not knowing why. I would scuff the entire thing thoroughly, and why is it delaminating after the fact? It was always because of polyester. And the one project that sticks out in my mind was I did a Jeep for my dad, and it was in the tailgate. This Jeep was beautiful, metallic color, everything came out great, cut and buffed, frame off restoration. And then it was about the time we finished that I could see around the letters where it says Jeep was starting to blister and bubble. So ever since then, because of the amount of work that we put into every project, even going back that far, I have never gone back to polyester in over 20 years. So fast forward to today, the reason that we chose to use polyester, even though it scares the living crap out of me because of my childhood in doing this, we chose it because of the timeline. I know that polyester is going to shrink fast and dry fast. But the reason that we chose to face the fears and use it is because we are educated now, where when I was a kid, I wasn't thinking about a technical data sheet. I wasn't thinking about what I was spraying that polyester over. And then understanding each of your products that you're using and how can you leverage them to give you more time, give you more build, and not have to fight that gun that's plugging solid and not spraying. Every time I would spray polyester, I felt like I would start to spray a panel, and maybe the first, I'm not over exaggerating because a lot of times we're in Southern California in the heat and I'm outside. One, the panel was hot, and two, it would only be in the gun in the sun. We would only get halfway through any small panel, and all of a sudden the gun would just choke down and it wasn't spraying but this little bit of primer. So it was always this back and forth battle. We need to build something so we can block it back down, but I couldn't even get the dang product out of the gun. Here we are today with this extremely expensive truck and a very complex paint job. So there's not a lot of room for error here, but understanding what are all of the things that we need to do with this product, we want to make sure you guys understand and don't have the same problems that I have faced in the past. Now, I know a lot of you guys that follow me in my work, I preach VP 2050 because it is epoxy high build, and I don't want to get you guys confused. We are going to discuss that later in this video. For this particular purpose, I want to dive deep in how do you spray a polyester accurately and correctly. When you're spraying polyester, number one, read the TDS sheet for that particular product. Now, going back to when I was a kid doing this, I was using a polyester that was not an approved DTM primer, a direct to metal primer. The primer that I was using, there was nothing there that was going to have adhesive properties to it. So if you understand what grit, what gun, what temperatures are those things drying at, what is the pot life? The pot life is once you have mixed it and catalyzed it, polyester primer is a 2K primer. 2K is where you have a hardener and it is two parts. So if you think about a spray can is a 1K. It is only one part. You are not mixing it. If anything is referred to as a 2K primer, it has a hardener and it has a pot life. That is how long you have to work that primer in the cup, and it's going to tell you what temperature that is rated at. Now, as that temperature goes up, most of these temperatures that you'll find in a TDS sheet are rated at 70 to 75 degrees. If your temperature is a lot higher, in our case, we shot this thing in 110 degrees in this booth, and on the wall, I think it was 117 degrees. The reason that I tell you guys all of that is because the amount of time that you have from mixing it, and I'm taking you back in time to my childhood. I had a bigger cup. I was thinking about pouring it in and just going, and pouring it in and going. But because of the pot life being so short, you're talking about could be 20 minutes. Well, what is your temperature? If it's 20 minutes at 70 degrees and it's 100, for every 15 degrees, I think you cut it in half. It drastically drops. So if here I am trying to shoot out of the gun and I'm in 100-degree weather right out of the gate, I've already lost the battle. But because I know what the TDS sheet says for this product, I shot this product over the Willys cab initially, and we had a couple little areas that had burn-throughs where bare metal was showing. But this is the optics from Evercoat. It's the Super Build 4:1, and it is a DTM approved primer. So number one, I know that it's approved to go over bare metal. Down to the point where if you had a bare metal spot, and you wouldn't think that it would matter, if I have a little burn through right here, it's not going to delaminate. The whole car's covered, it's just one little spot. It will delaminate in that one little spot. So I made sure that the product that we were going to switch gears to was a DTM approved product, number one. Two, the temperature that we had, I knew I couldn't mix a big batch. And I knew that it tells me what tip size that I'm going to be referred to for my gun. And typically polyesters are shot with a 2.0 to a 2.5 tip because it needs to be a hose. It is a very thick product. Something about polyester that you need to know versus all the rest of the primers is that it is basically sprayable body filler. It is extremely thick. Now, what is polyester? Polyester is a porous product. It will wick in and it will absorb any moisture. So typically you don't wet sand. Now I know there are polyesters out there that are approved to wet sand. Just because of my back experiences, not to say that I wouldn't try it or test it, but I'm very leery. I got trust issues. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to use a product, I know exactly what the outcome is. Here, we shot this with about 4 coats. Now, what's nice is that this particular product, you can shoot as much as up to 24 mils. Do I recommend that? No. But the reason that we chose polyester was because of the dry time. It dries fast, it cures fast. You don't have as much shrink as you're going to have with other products. And because of that, I can get right back on it. If we're having every day count, every hour count, and we're working 24-hour shifts around the clock with several crews and guys working, I know that we can spray this and within 2 hours we can start blocking this panel. Is that ideal? Not necessarily, but it's doable and it's approved on a TDS. Because of the tight timeline, I needed to be working still on body work on other panels and other pieces of this truck. So I was training one of my guys to be doing the shooting of the polyester. I was letting him know of all of the things to be considering before he gets in. Making sure that he has his suit on, his mask ready, is the booth on, is your garage prepared. We were going over the checklist to make sure that when you mix this product, you are now on a time clock. It's the same thing as when you mix up body filler, you're on a time clock. It's fast. You have to compare this primer, polyester primer, exactly to body filler. Because you're on a time clock, you need to get it in and on the car as fast as you can, and it's going to directly depict what your temperature is that day. So number one, we made sure everything was in place. He came out and started spraying. But some of the things that I had forgotten because I wasn't here was the gun started sputtering on him. Now, we use the PPS cup system and it has a screen in the lid. But the thing that you need with polyesters, you need a 2.0 tip or a 2.5, so you're getting that flow of that thick primer to come out and lay nice, or at least have a good looking texture on the door. You don't want it to look super dry. You want it to actually flow out nice. And if you're getting sputtering and all that stuff, well, let's directly relate it to body filler. If you're having a gun that's sputtering, well, it's just like taking filler off your board and just putting it in random spots. We need it to lay flat and nice. It can be orange peel. We want the build. We just don't want inconsistencies. We want that to be as uniform as possible. Otherwise, we're defeating the purpose of why we even chose to go with polyester. The screen that's inside the PPS cup will limit how much flow it's getting out of the cup versus if you had strained it before and then ran it through. Now, I'm going to tell you, typically most polyesters are so thick, you're not really going to strain them. You're going to mix them up and make sure you get the bulk of the chunks out. You can pre-strain them in another cup, but you're putting it right into your cup. Now, if you're at home and you're not using the PPS system, I will tell you this. There is that little weep hole in the top cap of your gravity-fed gun, or if you're using a siphon feed gun, you still have the little weep hole so that way the canister can breathe and allow the paint to flow up through the gun. But if that product gets sloshed, because it's so thick, it will plug the hole and you will lose your flow. So the gun, as he was going through, started sputtering, and it was a simple, quick fix. Pull the cap off, rip the screen out, and get right back to business. Now we're rolling through that time clock and making sure that we have everything flowing evenly through the panel. Now I want to give you guys some other scenarios. As he's working through one panel only on one side, we're noticing that because of our temperature, it's drying at a fast rate, and we know that our flash times in between coats per the TDS sheet is 5 to 10 minutes at 70 degrees. Well, if it's 110 degrees, our flash time is immediate. Now, I want you to think about something that you could really think about on all of your products that you're reading a TDS sheet. If you know you only have 5 to 10 minutes for that product to flash, you scuffed the panel, right? That's where your adhesion, you're getting a mechanical adhesion to the panel. Do you actually have adhesion if you've moved around to several panels on the vehicle and you only had, call it a minute, maybe it's 30 seconds, that flash time is now because you've lost, it's not 70 degrees, it's already kicking, it's already hardening. It would be like putting body filler on top of unscuffed body filler. You're going to have a delamination issue. So because of the temperature, we made sure that he stayed in one area. So on that panel that he worked one at a time, we worked through the panel, and when we got to the bottom, we're already drying at the top. You can touch it and feel that it's still a little bit on the tacky side. It's going to accept more filler. So we worked right through. Well, if we're going to build, we knew we liked about 3 to 4 coats based off of what we could see disappear with the scratches and some of the minor lows. So we chose 3 to 4 coats. We're going to do 3 to 4 coats through that entire panel, and we're only biting off an area that we can get to in that amount of time. We don't want you guys straying out away if your temperature is high, and by the time you make it back around to cab, as a perfect example, that is now already cured, and that is going to pop and delaminate. These are all of the things that used to scare the hell out of me, but because of the timeline, this is what we needed. We've all tried something as a kid and didn't like it. Maybe it was a food or something you did, and then we get older and we realize that maybe that wasn't so bad or that changed. And I would recommend that things do change and we learn more, and sometimes it's better to go back and try that product again and see what kind of advantages that you can use it for instead of just being completely closed off to that one thing. Going back to when I shot the cab was the first thing that we put in polyester. I didn't have any issues because I was already thinking fresh on the things that I needed to do in order. I give the hood and the doors to one of my guys to spray. And I'm out body working, sanding down all the polyester and blocking it out. And he comes out with the gun tipped sideways, upside down, unplugged. And he's freaking out on, what do we do? He already knows it's kicking inside the cup. Like it's turning solid and we need to move. And so I had to stop what I'm doing. I'm dusty. I come into the booth and we're looking, he goes, yeah, the needle is stuck wide open. Well, why is the needle stuck wide open? So we're looking at, we got to use the cup. We don't want to waste the product. So I just plug the gun back in and start painting and just don't stop. We're spraying the hood at that time and we finished out with not wasting any product. And then we had to go back to the bench and figure out, well, why did the needle stick? The needle stuck because the gun that we were using needed a rebuild kit. Every time that I take the gun apart, I oil my needle. Well, when I did the cab, I didn't realize that was introducing something that could have failed that I didn't even realize was a problem. And here I give it off to one of my guys, and because he is cleaning out the gun every cup, if we know that it's curing inside the cup, if you're using a PPS liner, it might mean that you ditch one liner every time or clean the whole gun every cup. That way it's not getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But what that introduced was spraying the gun out over the trash can with brake cleaner. That removed the oil that I put on the needle to slip through the gun. And because of that, the needle stuck wide open. So there's all kinds of things that you're going to have and you're going to be stressed while you're in the midst of the project. Don't freak out. It's just paint. Worst case scenario, you smoke a cup of it and you just figure out what the problem is. There is an oil that is approved. I don't want you guys to go home and think that you can put any oil on the needle by any means. This is a spray gun approved oil. We use the DeVilbiss because it's a little bit thicker consistency. It stays on there, but it is paint friendly. If you used any other oil, you would have fish eyes all over your project. So I just wanted to make sure you guys understand that there are things that are going to happen. You just have to understand every aspect all the way through the project so you don't have these hurdles frustrate you and you ruin the product. If I was to go back in time as a kid shooting my dad's Jeep, even after the struggles that we had yesterday shooting this, I would say that it would be extremely frustrating and I probably would have the same feeling about it. But today, with understanding the knowledge and having several different projects where we can actually take a product and know what it's going to be used for, know where to leverage it, now it's something that we can use as an extra tool in our tool belt to help with certain projects. We needed something that was going to dry fast, and this fit the bill. It could give us the build that we needed and the dry time, and there was never any downtime for that particular project. Now let's go back to polyester versus VP 2050, which is what I typically use. And which one is right for you on your project? Why would you not use polyester? Maybe you're in a state that has 60% humidity. Polyester is absorbent. Well, did your project have epoxy as the ground coat in the beginning that's going to help seal out some of that moisture? But no matter what, maybe your shop is somewhere that has WD-40 flying around and it's not something that you can just wipe off. It is like a sponge. It will soak everything in. And yes, you can have issues with rust going down to the base. This product is used over direct to metal, so we were okay with that. But you have to know that if there is nothing underneath that that is sealing out the moisture, that may not be the project that you want to use polyester for if it's going to sit for a long time. If your project's going to be sitting for a period of time and you want that protection from the moisture and the elements, VP 2050 will fit your project better because you are sealing out all of the moisture. Maybe your project's in a later stage and you want to wet sand. Again, you can wet sand some polys, but I know for a fact that VP 2050 all day long, I can dry sand it, I can wet sand it, and I don't have to worry about any kind of rust starting below. It's going to completely seal out any moisture. I know a lot of this sounds very confusing, but I want you guys to know that we do have classes here at the shop where we go in depth at sylvesterscustoms.com. We have all updated dates of when we're gonna have our classes with a small group of people where we can really dial in your particular project. You can come with the ideas and the pictures and the references, and we can actually talk about your build specifically, so that way you have a very clear roadmap of how to go from point A to point B and not have a bunch of problems and redos. Now, in the last video, we got you guys on the hood of this project for this Willys. If you guys have not subscribed or liked, we are going through the entire process from start to finish with this particular truck. Where we left off on the hood in the last one was 150 grit. All of our body filler was done and it was smooth. We've guide coated it and we did that final block out. But let's talk about how we're gonna block it next. Let's lead into the next phases of what we did with this project and how to accurately block out your polyester and things to look for. We've got 4 coats of this polyester primer on this hood. And on this hood, we ended in 150 grit. Now, polyester is very textury. It has a lot of orange peel. It has a lot of build. And if we know this product has up to 24 mils that you could use, we want to cut that down. I find that a lot of people oversand their projects with too many grits. What do I mean by that? I come back in after polyester primer or after VP 2050, either one that you're using, we're referring to a high build primer. What is the high build primer specifically doing? If we think about the hood, we added filler in several different passes. Maybe it was 10 different times that you took going down the length of your car. We are adding the polyester primer to be one uniform coat. One uniform spread is basically how we want to think about it. And if that is uniform, we have now taken the 10 fills that we did in body filler, and we can now then come back in and we want to block that down even. Well, in the beginning, we are blocking just a small spot with the filler, and now we want to be focusing on moving with the distance of the hood with hands placed evenly on the block and a lighter pressure. Back when we started the shop and Mike, who is filming this, started working with me, it was very hard for me to actually reel back and understand how to teach somebody how to block lightly. Mike came to me, what do you mean block lightly? Describe what is blocking lightly. When we are defining what light pressure is to somebody that has no concept of what that feel is, the analogy that I would give you, that Mike came up with, is that if you're holding a block evenly to the surface that you have, right? So you've picked the block thickness that you need for whatever you're working on, you want a pressure that you can glide over the top of water without pushing the block under the water. That light, extremely light, to where you're just gliding over the surface and you're seeing the shapes develop. So if you place your hands on a block evenly for the shape that it feels nice, and the block is just riding over the panel smoothly, and we're going the longer distance. So number one, the way we're going to get a nice smooth finish without ripples is going to be the thickest block for the shape. Picking the block that you can put over the curvature of that panel with your thumbs and have very light pressure, just to put the pressure down. We don't want that pressure to have to be forced down onto the panel, because then we know that the block is too rigid in the center and we're gonna have a flat spot. We want the thickest block, and I used to say the longest block, but now I've reverted to saying a block around 24 inches. 22 to 24 inches seems to be, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, if you have a longer block, more than 2 feet long, you've only got 2 hands. Unless you're gonna block a ship with 15 people long, it doesn't make sense. We will teach in our classes the pressure points of your hands and how you read a panel. If your hands are placed anywhere on that block, let's say you have a 2 feet long block, if you move both of your hands closer to one side, your block is no longer 2 feet long. So a lot of people are always worried that if they move their hands on the block and they start working over here, that excess sticking off the block is going to wear a hole. And that's not the case. Is it going to scratch your panel? Yeah, but you're already scratching the panel with the grit that you are in. So to go back into polyester, I like to use something aggressive enough that you are actually going to bite in the panel. You do not want to take down a mountain range with a shovel. You want to grab the excavator and get that dirt out of there is the way you want to be thinking about it. So you want something as aggressive as, you could even go 120 if you want. It depends on how much millage you have on the panel. But we want you to have even hand placement, light touch. Let the block do the work in an X pattern going through the panel, and then also move for the entire duration of that panel. For this particular hood, I'm going to make sure that we go from the front all the way through the back. But if you're blocking the side of, say, a Lincoln, then you're going to want to be walking the entire car one slow step at a time, being even so you can make that mirror. If you're being at it uneven and inconsistent in certain areas, you just introduced inconsistencies. That is the same thing as if you have a gun that is sputtering all over your panel. We're thinking about every little detail. Every single pass that you make with that block should count, down to where you stop. What we want here is, I like to take the polyester down to a point where I barely start to see the filler showing below the panel. Because if we know that, we know we don't have a whole bunch of excess polyester on the car, and we have the correct shape. That is our baseline. We've already taken the major dents out. We're just trying to connect all of those 10 fills to look like one uniform sweeping shape with no ripples. The other thing that I want to tell you is, if your gun shot and it was sputtery, or you shot it uneven, or maybe you're finding this video after the fact and you shot a whole bunch here and a little over there, you're going to be looking at the panel surface and seeing immediately what is showing up. Now, this particular primer, this is the Optex Super Build. It's a 4:1. It turns pink as you spray it, and when you sand it, it turns gray. So the pink is actually acting as a built-in guide coat. So as you are gliding over the panel, you will see the gray show up. Those are the areas that you want to focus on. The things that I teach in our classes here is that if you fixate, let's say you're a skier going down a hill, and you say, don't crash into the tree, don't crash into the tree, you're gonna fixate on the tree and you're gonna crash into the tree. Versus stay on the path, stay on the path. So where your eyes and coordination with your hands need to remain on the areas that you see becoming flat. So if we think about a plateau, a high point in a mountain range, as you block and skim over the panel, you start to see those areas show up first. We want to fixate your eye and your hand coordination to stay on the area that is the highest point. We want to bring everything that is high down to where the lowest area is. And the way that you know when to stop is if you see body filler show up, or metal, or anything, and I'm talking a hint of it. It is very nice to have something that has a very good contrast like these pink panels, or if you're shooting VP 2050, use an aerosol guide coat, because then you are going over the entire panel and you can see anything that develops. Maybe you're in a door jam and you're hard to get. You can't get the powder of the guide coat into that area. So if you use an aerosol guide coat, you're getting every little area and you're watching that develop. Keep your hands on the area that are high. And the rule of thumb is a fist, or ironically. If the low spot or the dark low in your panel is anything bigger than your hand, then the rule of thumb is that you do not put your hand as you block through that area. The reason is, if the area is wider than my hand, I am going to continue to work that area to have a ripple. If I focus my hands to always stay on the area that is the highest point and bring that down ever so slightly, as it comes down, those areas will creep into that low spot, and then you will create one perfect mirror finish. A lot of people think that it's because of the products. Maybe they think that because we use PPG, we got that finish, or because we use extra clear, we got that finish. It is not any of that. I could use the crappiest paint the thinnest clear, and have the same look. It is all in that touch of how you block across the panel and what your hand and eye coordination do as you work the panel down. This is going to get you up to date with this project of where we are right now in polyester, and we're going to be filming every single step of this project. So if you have not subscribed, and if you haven't gone back and looked at our other videos, Mike has categorized these videos to do metal work and body work and paint. So if you guys actually go to the home page, we've made it very simple for you guys to actually find the videos that you need versus just scrolling through and seeing a collaboration of mixed things. So if you guys haven't subscribed, please do. Please share. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the next one.